All right, so this is your trusty Beans to Brew group digging into exercise 10 today.
All right. And the first thing that we're going to talk about in this exercise is an empathy map, which we designed to speak on behalf of the volunteer user, which is something that we've been talking about a lot in our previous cases. So we thought that it was a relevant individual to use for this empathy part. And so I'll just start out by going around these four topics. So what do they say and do? The volunteers are in charge of making and selling coffee throughout the shifts which they volunteered to work during. And so essentially what they're saying and doing is pretty much what's in line with that work. So taking orders from customers, telling them how much it costs, and then going and fulfilling that order, even if it means that they are also brewing additional coffee along the way. What do they think and feel? They probably feel like they need more instruction because they don't want to create waste by making too much coffee, but they also don't want to make customers upset by not having enough to fulfill orders. So they probably feel like they need a little bit more instruction in order to fulfill this role. What do they hear? They hear the customers asking for coffee and pastries while they're trying to do all of the other things that are part of their job, like ringing up the orders or brewing another pot of coffee. And lastly, what do they see? They see leftover coffee getting poured down the sink at the end of the closing shift because there was too much left over. So all of these things just go to show how being a volunteer in this organization is more than just a metric like we're viewing it. It's something that actually impacts an individual. And so there are various facets of what that may mean to that person, including both pain and gain. So in this case, pain would be having to volunteer more time on a certain week when staffing is low, or maybe even having to drop plans to cover shifts so that the company doesn't have to close. But that would also potentially lead to gains in that they can contribute to a broader movement towards more sustainable business practices while also making customers happy.
And with all that, we're going to move into the opportunity canvas for Beans to Brew. Here we took a much more macro approach instead of a more micro one with the empathy map. And we'll start essentially going down the list. We'll start with the ones, then move on to 2, 3, 4, etc. So the problems are there's too much food waste occurring. We're hoping to reduce it. There's not enough volunteers on hand at Beans to Brew. And due to some of these issues, there are frequently issues when it comes to meeting customer demands. Some ideas, some solutions to these problems are the following: limit the amount of coffee brewed to reduce waste, and with that, having preset times to brew coffee based on seasonality as well as predicted customer demand. Next, using seasonality data to make purchasing decisions and avoid throwing away unused pastries and products. And then finally, communicating sustainable values and missions to the student volunteers as well as the student executives, and providing sustainability training to all Beans to Brew members. So with that, we're going to move into the users and customers. What are they? Who are they? They are the faculty executives who essentially run the entire business from the top, the student executives who are next in line within that hierarchy. They're the volunteer workers. Then there are the student customers and the local suppliers from which Beans to Brew sources their products. The solutions today, so these are the immediate ones that could be put in place, is beginning to track waste in order to further along begin to limit our waste and adapt to more long-term solutions, using past seasonality to make purchasing decisions from our local suppliers. We have access to that data. We could decide or analyze it and determine which products are purchased the most frequently overall, as well as use seasonality data to determine which products are purchased when, maybe quarterly, and then determine what to source from our local suppliers. And then finally, marketing Beans to Brew sustainable values to volunteers in order to get more volunteers who fall in line with what Beans to Brew is preaching so that they might be more committed to the organization. Now, moving into business challenges, what are they? Well, there's wasting perfectly good products and spending too much on replacing them just to be wasted again. Kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy, a vicious cycle. You buy a lot of food, you don't use all of it, and then because you can't meet customer demand, you buy too much food again, vice versa. And additionally, there are slowdowns and shutdowns due to a lack of volunteer staff. Next, how will the users use our solutions? Well, they can use them to reduce their waste, both at work and at home. There'll hopefully be less overworked volunteers and students because we can get more volunteers on board. And potentially there will be less ambiguity in the job because we'll have more structures in place for when, where, and how to produce and brew coffee and what products to offer. So there'll be essentially less choices, which will lead to a more simplified shift for volunteers. Next, the user metrics. What are they? There's customer preferences we can examine, local supplier inventories we can analyze. We can use the AppState's academic calendar to predict demand. We can examine our volunteers' availability and determine when we need to market to new volunteers in order to fill gaps in our schedules. We can look at the overall number of sales as well as the number of sales for each specific product. And then finally look at net income from our product sales to determine which products bring in the most net income. And this might be the opposite or not exactly the product that sells the most. They might be two different things. Next, we have our adoption strategy. So how will our customers and users discover and adopt our solutions? Well, sustainability training is a big one. We want to offer this to the faculty executives, student executives, and our volunteer workers. Additionally, clearly communicating the value of these changes. That's important to get buy-in from everyone involved. And then because we're including everybody in on our solutions, having that support from the top leadership, both the students and the faculty execs, will be important. Next, what are the business benefits and metrics? We can look at ROI. We can look at the triple bottom line, which is economic, environmental, and social. And this is all sustainable based. We can look at revenue and overall net sales, and this can be impacted by either an increase in what we sell due to us favoring products that are preferred by our customers, or a reduction in expenses because we're purchasing less and wasting less overall. And finally, we can look at customer and worker satisfaction and commitment to Beans to Brew via some form of survey. And then finally, the budget. We have three different points here. Number one is, what might it cost our organization if we don't create the solution? Well, loss of profits from increased waste. Number two, what might your organization earn or save if we do implement these solutions? As I mentioned, there could be reduced expenses and possibly increased satisfaction, overall commitment. And then point three, given all of that, what would your organization budget to create this solution? And for this, we would decide the budget based on seasonality data overall.
And now we will be going into our Kanban board. And this just serves as kind of an agenda in accomplishing our objectives. So for what to do, we have analyzing Beans to Brew data so we can identify the ways volunteers are able to reduce waste during their shifts as well as throughout the shop. And to do this, we will be looking at resources such as sales data, transaction data, the customer preferences, forecasting measures, the AppState academic calendar, as well as the volunteer schedule.
And then in progress problems, there's food waste, not enough volunteers, slowdowns and shutdowns. And lastly, action needed, better waste measurement, recruit more volunteers, and better scheduling system. And with that, we would like to say thank you for your time and consideration. Hugs and kisses, and love you. Bye.